As I'm making this video at the beginning of 2021, Bitcoin is trading at $40,000. I wonder if grandma still has some Bitcoin stashed away. But anyway, today the goal of this video is to tell you what the likely path to $100,000 looks like and what needs to happen for us to reach that psychological level. So many investors made and lost a ton of money trading Bitcoin over the last few years. But now that Bitcoin effectively quadrupled in price from about $10,000 late 2020 to $40,000 in the beginning of 2021, it looks like we're in this kind of a second wave of a more institutionally accepted cryptocurrency that has a lot more credibility. And so the goal of this video today is to kind of see, what is the catalyst for us to move from $40,000 or $40,000 to the next psychological level of $100,000. So you may have seen this last week. Morgan Stanley disclosed that they now own 10.9% of Microstrategy. Now you may kind of wonder, what is Microstrategy and what does that have to do with Bitcoin? Microstrategy, if you look at this description page here on Bloomberg, is a company that provides business intelligence software. It's run by Michael Saylor, who you may have noticed had an exchange on Twitter just before Christmas with Elon Musk, where he tried to convince him to buy Bitcoin with the cash reserves that Tesla now holds, which are obviously substantial. And Elon Musk was kind of wondering, is this even possible for such large amounts? But effectively what MicroStrategy did 6 months ago, so back in August 2020, MicroStrategy, just like any other company, they have their corporate treasury department that holds a bunch of cash, which is their cash reserves to grow their business and make the business run. They decided to split it in two, and they used $250 million worth to buy Bitcoin. And then the other $250 million, they bought their own shares back. They did a massive buyback, and the rest they bought Bitcoin with. Now, if you look at this chart of the performance of MicroStrategy, you kind of see that for the whole of 2020, the stock price didn't really do much, right? This is not a high growth company like Zoom or Snowflake. This is a regular kind of a business intelligence software company that really hasn't done much. But towards the end of 2020, you see as Bitcoin started rising, MicroStrategy stock suddenly had this huge 300% gain. And so Morgan Stanley, which was already investor in the third quarter, bought a ton more shares in the fourth quarter, and they now own 10.9%. In fact, if you look at the ownership structure here for MicroStrategy, you see that you have household investor institutional names in the list. You have BlackRock at number 2 for 16.5%. Vanguard at 10.78%. At number 7, you have Norges Bank. This is the Central Bank of Norway. Then Morgan Stanley number 10. This is just not updated by Bloomberg yet, but Morgan Stanley now at 10.9%. And then you have other household names like Goldman Sachs, Prudential, Northern Trust, JP Morgan. So why am I telling you this whole story, right? Effectively, what MicroStrategy did is they completely pivoted away from their core business of business intelligence to becoming a proxy investment pool vehicle for Bitcoin, right? They have so much Bitcoin now that they have 70,000 Bitcoins, which is worth about $3 billion. So again, back to this chart here, in August when they started this whole strategy, the market cap for MicroStrategy was $1.25 billion. Today it's $5 billion, simply because this whole exposure to Bitcoin, right? So effectively, what you're going to see, and to take us back to the question, how do we get to the next level in Bitcoin? You're going to see a lot of these companies like MicroStrategy, which by the way issued a convertible bond and used the proceeds to buy more Bitcoin. Right? So you're gonna have a lot of more companies. You're gonna have these copycat companies that will say, well, why don't we just take all the cash that we have, or some of the cash that we have, and convert it to Bitcoin, and become these proxy pools for investors to invest in, to mirror the exposure to Bitcoin. Because for a lot of the institutional and even private investors, it's still pretty hard to buy Bitcoin, either because of restrictions, what you can hold, lockup periods, etc. If you look at the GBTC, that's the grayscale Bitcoin trust that trades at 40% premium to Bitcoin, there are restrictions to hold that. Some institutional investors will have restrictions on on how and if they can even hold Bitcoin, but they don't have restrictions in what stocks they can hold and buy. And so Microstrategy suddenly is acting as this proxy company to really get exposure to Bitcoin. And this is what Morgan Stanley, obviously as a household mainstream investment institutional name, is doing by owning almost 11%. And by the way, there's more companies like that. If you look at the Massachusetts Mutual Life Insurance Company, this is a monster asset manager, 169-year-old institution that recently bought $100 million worth of Bitcoin. Now, for them, this is a drop in the bucket because they manage more than $200 billion in assets. This is a 0.04% of their assets that they're putting in Bitcoin. But if you just look at the overall investment pool and assets in the world, and you suddenly see this wave of institutional acceptance of cryptocurrencies, of Bitcoin. This is no longer a currency that is used for gambling and drug dealing and sending shady money around the world. This is suddenly considered on par or better than gold, a storage of value that has limited supply. That's another big deal. That the limited supply of Bitcoin and the volume that's coming into the market suddenly is pushing the prices much higher. And so to answer the question that I asked in the beginning, how do we get to $100,000 here? Well, simply you'll have many more institutions like Morgan Stanley, like MassMutual, like JP Morgan and others that will start putting more of their cash and reserves into Bitcoin. And you'll have these copycat companies that will want to be the intermediaries, the investment vehicles that these institutional investors will put money in because they will be able to mirror the performance of Bitcoin. And by the way, JP Morgan's target for Bitcoin today is $146,000. Guggenheim, their target is $400,000. So this is how we're gonna get to the next big level. And by the way, the last video I posted on this channel looks at the craziest stories we have seen in the markets in 2020. So make sure you check that out. But for sure, Bitcoin looks like it's gonna be another crazy story for 2021. All right, I hope you enjoyed this conversation. Make sure you give a like to this video, subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed this kind of content, and I'll see you in the next video.